Che, what's up, brother? Thanks for joining me on the podcast today.
What's up, Ryan? Thanks for having me, man. Great to be here.
Yeah, I know a little bit about your story with drugs and crime and gangs and, a 15-year imprisonment. And man, I thought it was really important that we have this discussion because I know how many men are struggling with
hmm
some of the same activities or maybe something different, but they're past and they're finding it really difficult to overcome and remain trapped in the past. But it seems to me that you've done a phenomenal job. Of course, I don't know your full story, but a phenomenal job overcoming your past life and creating something entirely different moving forward.
Well, I'm trying. That's the whole point. You know what I mean? I'm trying to make it happen. I think it's just you take it one day at a time, and the most important thing is you stop listening to the noise. That's it. Just stop listening to the outside noise.
What was that noise for you? I mean, we'll get into your story of imprisonment, but when you talk about the noise, is that mental baggage? Is that noise from other people? Like, how did that manifest for you?
Well, for me, I think it was more internal. Internal being in the sense of not being able to overcome certain things and in situations that I found myself in. A lot of my issues started when things didn't go the way that I thought they would go. I was into sports. I was playing football. I thought I was going to get scholarships from all over the country, and it didn't work out that way. And then when that happened, my life lost meaning. It lost purpose. And so when that happens, it's so easy to gravitate towards other people who don't have a purpose. And so we found a common purpose in, negativity, in criminal activity and hanging out, doing nothing and finding trouble to get into. And so, that was my thing, internal thing. I think now, we're up against, so much as far as an agenda to keep us, especially men. I believe men are very, very much being attacked in that sense. And the noise also now is compounded these days because there's a noise to keep men from trying to overcome their problems. They would rather us just wallow in the misery and the sorrow of the things that we go through as opposed to learning that we can overcome these things and these feelings of rejection and not feeling like you're good enough. These are temporary. You can overcome them. You can actually transcend those things. And I think the noise is like two parts now.
Yeah, so you're talking about the internal noise that we have, and then also you say that there's an agenda. Who do you think is leading that agenda? What do you think that agenda is? I mean, I think in part I agree, and I've
Mm-hmm.
really spent a lot of time thinking about is there an actual coordinated agenda to undermine masculinity? And I believe there is, and I think it's coming from a few institutions, government, the medical fields, and academia. So I'm curious what you think about that and where it might be coming from your perspective, and why even.
Well, you hit it all three on the head. I mean, that's exactly where it's coming from. And I also think entertainment as well. If you're going to throw
Mm,
another institution in there, I think the entertainment industry. I think they're vital to this. I think what they're trying to. So when I talk to people about this agenda, and people say, "Well, why would men be targeted? Is it because they're strong? Is it because we can grow a beard? Is it because of our genitalia or anything?" And I don't think it's any of those things. I think it's the way that we process and the way that we think. I think if you're trying to manipulate a person and just an individual person, you have to get them to think on an emotional level. And so men, if you look at the two, male and female, we are different, despite what the world may tell you, we are different. We bring two different uh, sets of qualities to the table, and so a lot of those things start in the mind and how we process and how we think. And men are more logical thinkers. We think logically, and that's what we bring. If we're raising a family, my wife is going to provide the emotional nourishment that the child needs, and I'm going to provide the logical reasoning that the child needs. Well, the logical reasoning is the most important thing, and this is why, if we get biblical, God told us that man is the head of the household because we can bring both things together, but at the end of the day, logic is always going to win. I don't care if you feel like you can fly. When you get on that third-story building and you jump, logic wins. Your subjective feelings doesn't matter. And I think what happens is that man is being attacked because they want people to be more emotional, and the more emotional that you are, the more easily you are to manipulate because these are subjective feelings. And so this is what's going on today is we've seen a coordinated effort by all those institutions that you mentioned to in order to manipulate and to take away the logical reasoning from the next generation. And if you look at the generations, look at this next generation that's coming up. They're very emotional. They're very illogical. And so when you're very illogical and very emotional, we can manipulate you and we can put any type of doctrine that we want to put out there and people are going to accept it because there's no solid foundation. And I think that's, if we're going to get to the root of the whole thing and the core of it, I think that's what the attack on masculinity is based on.
Yeah, I think it's certainly a control play. So you're talking about the emotional control of men in particular. I also think that there's a real push to normalize degeneracy. You look, for example, you said the entertainment industry. Look at the over sexualization of the entertainment industry, and this is nothing new. I mean, this is going on as
Mm-hmm.
has been going on as long as I think humans have, probably roamed the earth. But because men are attracted to that the opposite sex, right? But you look at
Mm-hmm.
that, you
Yeah.
look at transgenderism, you look at multiple genders, you look at furries in the classroom and putting, dog pads or grass in a classroom so kids can poop there. It's this stuff's ridiculous, and it's real, and it's becoming normalized so much so that when you see this type of stuff, this filth and degeneracy, most people don't even bat an eye.
Well, I mean, because it demoralizes you. You know what I mean? And we know that there's no substance in degeneracy. There's no substance. I mean, I know I can speak for myself personally. I've been on a path of no purpose and nothing, right? So I've been on a path where I woke up in the morning, had nothing to do other than to, roll a blunt, smoke weed, find something to drink. I'd be drinking by 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm already there. You know what I'm saying? I'm finding now it's just trouble. It's just calling different girls up. Hey, what are you doing today? And so all I'm focused on is degeneracy. And there's nothing there. There's no at the end of the day, it doesn't fulfill you. But when I'm waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm praying, I'm reading, I'm studying, I'm going to work out, I'm going to work, I'm progressive in the sense of trying to make progress in my life. There's a lot of fulfillment there. So if we're just putting on degeneracy and you get demoralized, you start to lose hope. There's nothing at the end of it. And when you can see yourself actually building things, building companies, building businesses, building relationships, those type of things, building a family, those things bring real fulfillment. And I think that, we talk about the agenda, and the agenda is to push people into this demoralization process. And so that's one of the things I think is the most leading cause of this mental health crisis that we see going on today, is that people don't feel like there's an answer to anything because the answers that they're seeking don't provide any type of substance. So yeah, there's a big push of degeneracy, the sexualization. There's nothing there. We've all been there. You know what I mean? We've all been to the point where we're looking for, in the next woman, in the next drink, in the next high, in the next whatever it is that's next for you. Real, substance comes from actually doing something and building things. And I think that they're trying to keep us from that.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about your story with regards to how you found yourself incarcerated. Because if I understand correctly, you did 15 years in the California state penitentiary system. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, 15 years.
So
From the ages
so
of 20
tell
to 35. Yeah.
20 to, and how old are you now?
I'm 40.
40. So you've been out of
Yeah.
prison for 5 years, and you've made a big shift in that 5 years. But I imagine there was a lot going on in prison to help you as well. But let's back up and let's talk about how
Mm-hmm.
you found yourself in that position and what led to that incarceration.
Like I said, I grew up in a two-parent household. I grew up, with Christian parents. We went to church. You weren't allowed to cuss. You weren't allowed to watch certain movies or listen to certain music growing up. We were very disciplined in that sense. But, I grew up playing sports, and sports was a big part of my life. And, once I started playing football, that's all I wanted to do. And I had a vision. That was my vision. I was going to play football, and that's where I was going to go with my life. And when it didn't turn out the way that I wanted it to go, and I got a few offers, but I didn't get offers where I wanted to go. I thought I could have done better. I got do a couple years in junior college, and then we'll see where you're at. But,
Was
and
that due
this is
to
the part I
schooling or performance on the field, or why those type offers versus going
a
somewhere
little
you had a
a
desire to
little of
go?
both. Yeah, a little of both. I think that they wanted to see how I would perform at the next level before they gave me a scholarship.
Mm,
I played linebacker. I'm about 5'10", 5'11", and so 5'10", 5'11", you don't really get, looked at as linebacker like that.
right,
I
right.
made the transition to defensive back in junior college, but by that time I was already like, I had one foot in the streets and one foot out. You know what I mean? And I was already kind of leaning towards that way. I didn't take it as serious as I should have. And this is a part, like, this is what I'm saying. Like, I was faced with an adversity. I was faced with an unexpected obstacle, and those things happen all the time. That's life, right? And so instead of responding to it and going the hard route and saying, okay, it didn't go the way that I wanted it to go, but it's still not over. All I got to do is keep putting in, working harder. um, I decided I got really depressed. I got really started to lose my focus, and you know, and just started getting into other things, and then getting around people. And I like I talk about in my book. You're growing up in L.A. Um, there's two people that are popular in schools: the athletes and the gang members, especially growing up in the '90s. And so sometimes they're one and the same. A lot of times we know each other. And I knew a lot of gang members growing up, and so it was easy to go over there. It was easy to kind of gravitate to them, and they kind of offered something the same that I was looking for, which was another place where I can be somebody. You know what I mean? And I learned how to do that in that environment. And that environment didn't last long because the law caught up to me, and so I ended up getting involved in a shooting case that got me 17 years, but I ended up doing 15 off of it. And so that's where I ended up in prison. And so a lot of times when I talk to people, especially men going through the same things, I always say you got to recognize these patterns. And so now I recognize these patterns. Adversity is a given, struggle is a given. Things aren't going to go the way that you want them to go. So that's how I ended up in prison. And then prison was it was an interesting ride in and of itself. I went through a lot of different changes in there, from personal philosophy, religiously. At one point, I was an atheist. I was knee deep in Marxism. I'm gonna say knee deep. I was neck deep in Marxism. I thought
Mm.
that was the way to go. I gravitated to that, um, because it was militant, because it was anti-establishment, because it was everything that I wanted to be, and most importantly, it gave me something else to point the finger at. You know what I mean?
Did
So
when you said you were in a shooting altercation or incident, was that a rival gang thing, or was that attempted burglary, or what were the
no,
details of
it
that?
was a gang. It was a gang related. Yeah, it was gang
And
related.
you, I'm assuming, what, you shot somebody? Is that what happened?
I was involved. I wasn't the actual shooter.
Got
So
it.
I was
Okay.
there. Yeah. And the way they do it is they don't look at it like, well, that person did this. They look at it like you were all involved, you were all there. It doesn't matter if it was 10 of us and nobody knew about it. The way they look at it is if they, and then they don't even have to prove that you were an actual gang member. They just have to show correlation or relation. Like, you're hanging around this person. He's a known gang member. Therefore, you are, and you did this, and you were all involved. It's just, we don't understand these things. We're out here doing this stupid stuff. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
they got sets of laws for you.
So did somebody die in that incident then?
No, it was they survived. Yeah.
Okay. I was curious if that's something that you wrestle with. I've never been in that situation. I don't know many people who
Mm-hmm.
have, other than, military service, but I wonder what the weight of something like that is moving forward, and how an individual progresses past that. Even though they're a new person, there's still the history that they might latch onto and hold onto for a long period of time.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's not an easy thing to deal with. You know what I'm saying? You have to deal with the fact that somebody had their life completely altered, based on the actions of yourself and the people that you were around. I think that the best thing that I can do now, I can't change what happened. I'm sorry that it happened. I'm truly remorseful for what happened. But the best thing that I can do is be of service now, today. You know what I mean? And so I think the one thing that you have to do is you have to forgive yourself. You can't keep beating yourself up over things that you can't control. It's in the past. I think that we've all done things that we regret, so to speak, but you have to be able to forgive yourself and move forward, because you're no good when you can see when you just constantly living in that um remorse and regret. You can be remorseful, but you have to show your life, improve your life through the service that you're doing now, and that starts with first forgiving yourself. So that took a long time. You know what I mean? That took a long time, and that's why I said I gravitated to the ideologies that allowed me to point the finger at somebody else, so that then I can say, well, I don't really need to be sorry. It's not my fault. It's capitalism's fault. I don't know how that comes into play, but we play these mental gymnastics to try to say things. It's the my environment's fault. It's my coach's fault, my mom and dad's fault. You're looking for everybody else, because the reality is that you have to take accountability for what you did, and that hurts. You know what I mean? It hurts to do that. But once you can get past that, then your life is, your life is free. And that's why I named the book The Freedom Doctrine, because real freedom comes from taking accountability for yourself.
Right. Yeah, and that's the hardest thing to do. And sometimes people think, with regards to accountability or responsibility, that it adds and it's burdensome in their life. And to a degree, yeah, understandable. You have responsibilities that you have to take care of, but it's also very liberating in other ways. I am
Definitely.
curious how, you did 15 years, and without having the numbers and the data in front of me, at least anecdotally or intuitively, I believe that most people that go into a situation like that don't end up changing for the better. It just reinforces their poor habits and their poor belief system. Uh, if that's true, you can tell me if it's not, but if that's true, how do you, in 15 years, navigate that environment and come out in a more healthy, productive mindset versus unhealthy, destructive mindset, which I imagine is where most people leave the prison system in?
Um, so they actually say that the more time that you do, the less likely you are to reoffend.
Hmm.
Most guys that do, like, you have, and that's basically because you get tired. And I think it's also because as we get older, we get less aggressive, you get less, you start to, and it weighs down on you, bro. Like, it's really hard to, you start to look at it and say, do I really want to go through all that again? I mean,
Yeah.
just the whole, the politics, it's really, really, weighs down on people. And I think what happens is, a lot of times people get tired. They just get tired. They get tired of having to deal with the same thing over and over, and the same, most of the things that we impose upon ourselves in there. And so, I think, for me though, I really had the mindset of, I'm going to use my time wisely. I used to always tell myself that my biggest fear was to be home, to get out, and to wish I was back in. And what I meant by that is, wish I still had the time, and so it made me not want to waste my time. Um, like I said, I studied a lot of different things. Most of it I don't agree with now, but I feel like it was part of the purpose. You know what I mean? It led me to where I'm at. So I don't regret any of the things that I was studying and learning and even propagated at times. I see that as part of the it was part of the process I had to go through. But yeah, I mean, you have to really, learn to detach yourself from that place. Prison is a different world, completely different world. There's a whole different set of rules. There's a whole different, mindset that goes into being there, and you have to detach from it. Um, I don't like to make this comparison, but you said you served in the military, and I could imagine that there's a different set of rules. There's a different mindset that has to take place in order to be a soldier, and it's kind of similar to that. I don't want to compare the two, because I feel like, you know two totally different reasons for being there. But what I'm saying is, it's not like civilian life. You know what I mean? It's not like
Right.
out here. It's completely different. So you have to learn to detach from that. You have to kind of, when you're there, say, this is how I'm doing, this is what I'm doing while I'm here. And then once you step out of there, you have to leave it behind.
What was that transition like? I'm actually curious about. You said your parents. You grew up in a two-parent household. Sounds like they were good Christians. What is that process like? As you're going through your sentencing, you're going through a 15-year prison sentence. Are you still communicating with your parents? And then What is that relationship like now with them?
Yeah, I communicated with them all the way through. They're the only two that really didn't never left my side. You know what I mean?
Mm,
I'm not gonna say
yeah.
the only, but one of the only two. They were there through it all. You know what I mean? They seen it all, and yeah, it was difficult. I mean, it was difficult for them to have to see that. I'm their first child. I'm their only boy. You know what I mean? And to see me have to go through that, it weighed a lot on my family. I didn't really understand how much it weighed on them until I came home. You know what I mean? I remember there was a and I was probably home for like a few weeks at this time. And so when I had got arrested, um they were they were interested in the car, and it was my mom's car. And so
Mm,
they had came to the house. They had pulled me over. I was already locked up. And so they came and they raided the house, my mom's house, because
your
that's the
parents' house.
address. Yeah, that's the
Were
address that
you
they knew I
living
was
there at the
at.
time?
I was, yeah. Yeah, I was
Okay, got
living
it.
there, here and there. I was running around. And so,
Yeah.
but that was the address that they had. And so when I remember I was with my sister and we were going to get some ice cream or something like that. And she was like, she pointed to an apartment building that we passed by, and she says, "You see that right there?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said it kind of casually, and she said that's where they pulled me and Mama over. Cops did,
Mm,
and at that moment, I was like, it kind of like hit me. She was past it. Obviously, my parents had been past it, but I didn't ever, because, like I said, jail. I was going through jail. I was going to court. Then I had to go to prison. You don't. The best thing you can do when you're in that situation is you don't live your life on the outside mentally, right? So that means you really can't put a whole lot of time and energy into worrying about what's going on outside, what your
mm,
family's going through, because there's so much going on inside that you have to focus on what's going on here, because that's what's real. You can't do anything about what's they're going. If they can't pay the rent, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? Except worry yourself and then put yourself in a bad situation where you're at. So I never had the opportunity to really process all that until that moment. And I remember, like, it kind of hit me like, wow, I really put them through a whole lot. You know what I mean? And so it's hard, and it's difficult. But nowadays, um, my relationship with my mom and dad is never been better. We're really close. They've really been there the whole way, and it's there's nothing better than to for them to see, you know, me make a positive change and really doing the things that they've always wanted me to do, anyways.
yeah, I imagine they're pretty proud of what you've gone through and how you've overcome it and where you are right now. When
Yeah.
you came home, I imagine what you probably lived with them for a period of time. Maybe I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Did you go out and look for a job? Like, what was that process of transitioning back into ordinary everyday civilian life?
So yeah, I lived with them for about a year. Um, I met I met my she's now my wife, but I met
Mm-hmm.
her within like 4 months of coming home. And
Really
so
fast.
we met kind of uh quickly. She actually lived around the corner from us. And so,
What did she think about your history?
she's all right with it. I remember, like, the first, like, I think we had been seeing each other for like a week or two, and I was more insecure with the fact that I lived with my mom and dad. I was 35 years old. So I was
Mm,
kind of like, I didn't, you know what I mean? I kind of felt like at 35, you should be established. You should have things going on. Why do you still live with your mom and dad? So I really wanted to tell her so that she would understand and not look at me like some bum or something like that. So,
right.
so I remember telling her. I mean, she was cool with it. She said, "Okay, well, that's fine." You know what I mean? That it is what it is. If that's not, as long as you're not on that page anymore. And so, she's really what keeps, she keeps me in line. Not to say that I need to be kept in line, but she really does. I mean, she really grounded me. She's really helped me to transition back, like you talk about transitioning back to civilian life. She helped me to be normal, I guess you could say.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Like, so many things that you just don't think of. Like I just give you an example, like celebrating birthdays. Like I had forgot about birthdays. Like I didn't really even care about them. And now she's like, I remember the first birthday we were together. She's like, "What are we gonna do?" And I was like, "I don't know, nothing." And she was like, "No, we got to do something. We got to do this." You know what I mean? And so, and she's really like helped me to, come out, because it is different. You know what I mean? It's different. It's different when you get out here. It's different. The people are different. It's a whole different mindset. And one thing I noticed, the biggest thing is, and it's interesting, is prison is easy because there's rules. And you know that when you step outside of these rules, there's going to be consequences. And a lot of those rules are, I'm not going to say petty, but they are in the sense of like, out here, people aren't as courteous. People aren't they're not as respectful out here. You can
Well,
be
there's no
walking out.
consequence to doing that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it takes a minute to kind of like adjust and see how people are. And you're like, whoa, you know what I mean? Like you just bumped into me. You're not going to say anything. And they just keep walking. And you're like, well, you're out here now. It's over. You know what I mean? You have to let that go. Sometimes that's just how people are. So it takes a minute to adjust. It takes a minute to kind of, step back, and, you'll deal with bosses that'll say things and you're like, wait, what? That's not how this goes. But it is, you know what I mean? And you have to just take it for what it is. So I've had family, my wife has really helped me, and it's still a process to this day, but I think I've made, pretty significant strides.
What was the process like of getting a job? Was that difficult? Was that a challenge, or was it entry level stuff where, your incarceration wasn't as big of an issue as it might be somewhere else? What was that like?
It's not difficult at all. That's one of the things I like to tell. Like when I work with guys that have that just got out of prison and stuff like that, we have a reentry program that I run out here in LA, and I think that's part of that's part of the myth, right? That they tell you it's going to be really hard to get a job. It's going to be really hard to get a job. When I came home, I went to a transitional housing, which was like
Mm-hmm.
a halfway house, and I was there for about 9 months. I was there. There's about 200 men in there. Everybody got jobs if you wanted it. You know what I mean? Like if you chose to get a job, it was not hard to get a job. I got it. The first job interview I went on, I got. You
What
know what I
was
mean?
it?
And so the first job interview I went on. The only reason I couldn't get the job was because of the restrictions of the place I was living in. But they offered me the
Mm.
job. It was just all it was it was interestingly enough, it was like in Santa Monica at a Maserati dealership. They
Oh,
wanted me to
really?
just wash the cars, make sure that they were detailed and nice and everything like that. But the thing is, they wanted me to drive from there to Beverly Hills, and I wasn't allowed to do that in the house that I was living in.
Got it.
I really went in there, and I sat down in front of the guy, and he looked at my resume and everything like that. And I said, I'm just going to tell you straight up, this is the situation. And I said, this is the situation. This is where I was at. This is what was going on. And I said, you know, and I just kind of just presented my case. You know what I mean? And he looked at me and he said, man, I respect that. I respect that you told me. I respect that you were man enough to say what it is. He goes, matter of fact, one of my best friends is in that situation. So I don't look
Mm.
down on you for it. And he really went out of his way to try to find me a job. And I just couldn't because of the restrictions. And he said, man, come back when you get out of there, I'll have a job for you. But I ended up
Wow.
doing other things, you know what I mean? But I just felt like, it's not difficult. I think we put the difficulty on ourselves by telling us how it's going to be so hard, and you're going to look. I think that, if you know how to speak, and you know how to present your case, and you know how to articulate yourself, and you really go in there with an attitude of, I'm here to make a difference. I'm here to help your company. I People will give you a shot. They really will.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm also interested because I've experienced this as well, obviously in a different context. But when I was in Iraq, I was in Iraq in 2005 and 2006. It was hard in a lot of ways, right? I mean, prison's got to be hard in a lot of ways. Being in
Yeah.
Iraq was hard in a lot of ways, but also there was a simplicity to it. I was told what time I need to get up, what time I need to get into work, what I'm going to wear every single day, where I'm going to live. I don't have to pay any bills. I don't have to worry about any responsibilities outside of my duties and my job there. Like there's a lot of simplicity in that. And I found that when I got home, it was very strange because there was nobody telling me what to do, when to do it, how to do it, or why. It was just, hey, you're whatever, do whatever you want now. It's like, oh, I don't really know what to do with that, and that was kind of a challenge for me. The other challenge that I had was seeing the petty bullshit and nonsense that people were wrapped up in
Oh
because I
yeah,
knew the
yeah.
gravity and the seriousness of the situation I was in. Did you experience anything like that?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. The day-to-day stuff, like you said, yeah, that kind of it's it weighs on you. I think that's the problem with a lot of guys, why they like to go back, they go keep going in and out of jail, because
Mm.
they know what they're going to expect in there. It's really simple. Out here, everything is on you. A lot of people don't want that responsibility. Um, I think the like you said, getting wrapped up in the pettiness of things, you don't really see. Like for me, for example, I really felt like a lot of people are very ungrateful out here, right? They lack gratitude for what they have, and it's only because of the situations that I've been in where you didn't really have anything, and so now it's like you take it all in. I take it all in now. You know what I mean? I take it all in. Anytime I'm doing something, my wife and I have been, blessed enough to travel. We went to Hawaii last year. That's the first time I had ever been there. We spent a week there, and
Awesome.
actually, it was we've been there twice since I've been home. And it's like I try to, in those moments of sitting on the beach, I try to sit there and just remember what it was like to not have that, and just to really be appreciative of this, you know what I mean, and this opportunity, and not to waste it. And then, I still talk to some people that are still there that aren't coming home, and they always kind of remind me, like, keep doing what you're doing, man. Keep going hard, because you don't want to be in this situation. You remember what this was like. So I think that's, it takes, yeah. And then it does kind of irritates you with people. You're like, man, why are you worried about this stuff, man? You have so much opportunity that you're just sitting here wasting it. And another thing, and I don't know if, I'm pretty sure you can relate to this. This is one of the things that still is kind of hard to get over. One of the things that I miss, um as funny as it might sound, that I miss, is the camaraderie that you have
Mm.
with other
Yeah.
other people in there. You know what I mean? Just the fact that we're going through these situations. I had great relationships that I made with men that were going through this situation, and we all kind of felt, um, a connection based on that. And so out here, you don't. It's hard to duplicate. And so sometimes you miss it. You miss that closeness, that bond that you have with other men, in a way that you're not going to get from other people out here.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to. I found that to be true. And even a lot of the guys that I talk with, and I imagine a lot of the guys that listen to you and resonate with what you're saying, you have to manufacture that
Yeah.
outside of sports. I grew up playing sports in high school. I never went on to play college like you did, but high school football was a big thing for me. You get it there, you get it in the military. And I imagine also, gang activity, prison
Oh
systems, you get
yeah.
that camaraderie. It's not necessarily healthy, but it's there, it's present. Uh, and so when you don't have those things, which most grown men don't, then you
Hmm.
actually have to go out of your way and exert yourself to create a brotherhood around you.
Yeah. You know what? It's interesting that you say that, especially when you talk about the gangs or the prison and stuff like that. I really think that, you know, when we talk about this agenda and masculinity and stuff like that, see, there are certain things that are innate in men, right? We have an innate desire and need to protect. We have an innate desire and need to provide. We have an innate desire and need to be of what's the word I'm looking for? A asset to your community,
Mm.
right? And so, and that desire is there. Like, we want to hunt, we want to go out there, we want to get dirty, we want to. If somebody is coming through our house, we're going to defend it. If somebody is trying to attack the kid down the street, we want to defend that kid. We want to be able to fight to a certain extent. If me and you were out in public somewhere, and I just met you, but if we were together and a group of guys came and approached you, I wouldn't just back down and be like, "Well, that's your business." You know what I mean? My
Right,
my
right.
innate desire is to step up and be with you, and then we'll figure it out later. Like, we have that within us. It's like it's an instinct that we have. And so when I look at, like, gangs, I don't look at gangs as what it is. Yes, it's not healthy. Yes, we do wrong, but I think that what it is that these men are looking for is that purpose. We're looking for that purpose. We want to defend. Like we want to sit here and they say, "Hey, these guys came down and they shot up the house down the street." Oh well, I want to go out there and I want to defend that. And so I think what happens now is that we don't have the proper channels. They're not giving these kids the proper channels in which to to channel that aggression and channel that desire, that they start to pervert it. And so now you're seeing this is what I call, this is like perverted masculinity. It's, we don't know how to use it, but it's there. We're aggressive. We want to protect. We want to hunt, and we don't know how to do it because we are not showing the proper ways to do so. So we're doing it in this warped kind of negative way of doing it. You understand what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah.
it's just kind of, it's a weird sense, and I see that now, and I see that even when people try to reform like gang members or criminals and stuff like that, it's almost like they try to take the fight out of them. And I don't want to take the fight out of you. I just want you to redirect it in a better way. You know what I mean? In the healthy way, in the way that God gave you to use it. You're supposed to use it to defend your family, to defend your community, defend your people. That's how you're supposed to use it. But I don't, this, if you go through a lot of the rehabilitation programs and in prison, it's almost like they want to beat you until you're submissive. And I don't think I think you're just creating a whole nother monster there.
Yeah, I think that leads, because you talk a lot about this mental health epidemic, and I think feminizing men, telling them to sit down, shut up, do what you're told, color within the lines, don't take risks, don't be competitive, don't be aggressive. That just leads to, that doesn't lead to less of that. That leads to repressed and bottled up
Very
masculinity,
much,
which at
yeah.
some point is going to seep through. And in a lot of instances, it's going to seep through in, at a minimum, unhealthy ways, and at a maximum, dangerous and destructive ways. This is why we see young boys who don't have father figures or male role models in their lives. What do? They get medicated and then they go shoot up schools. Like, this is not a difficult concept to wrap our heads around. The real question is, what do we do for our young men? Because you're right. I believe you're right. We have to have these institutions, but they're being dismantled systematically as well, or infiltrated. One great example of that is the Boy Scouts. Now, I've
Yeah.
been for
Yeah.
years, and probably a decade at this point, talking about the demise of the Boy Scouting program. I had people laugh at me, mock me, say I was stupid for saying this, and then not only a
Mm-mm.
few years later, now all of a sudden, women want to be in Boy Scouts, and the systems that they had in place, and the codes and the principles and the morals, like, we don't abide by that anymore. Like, that is being systematically torn down. Churches, you see church attendance dwindling for men. This stuff is being eroded before our eyes, and it's not going to lead to anywhere healthy.
Not at all. I mean, that's exactly what's going on, and it's creating, like you said, this is the reason why we see such a spike in the mental health problems. I mean, it serves the pharmaceutical companies. It really does, because we just go and they just tell us to get medicated. You know what I mean? And they know what they're doing. They know that this is a recipe for exactly what we're seeing happen. And like you said, they get medicated, then they go and they shoot up schools. They do all this, they become very effeminate. They become useless to a certain extent, to where they're not even providing any kind of benefit to their family. They're not even being able to raise a family. I mean, you can't keep kicking men down and thinking that it's going to be a good thing, that they're never going to respond. They're never going to lash out. It's going to happen. And every time that happens, they say, see, this is proof why we need to continue to kick them down. But this is
Mm.
what this whole system has now deviated to, we're doing unnatural things. Like I said earlier, men and women are different. We have our places for a reason. And what you're trying to do is force men into a box that they're not comfortable with and they're not built for, and it's not within their nature. And so what you're seeing is some men are conforming, but even their conformity is a perversion, and it's destroying our society. So in order for us to get back and get back to where we're supposed to be, we have to start building institutions. Men like yourself, men like myself, and other people that are out there, we have to start using our voice and using our platforms to get these men and see that there's another way, and then make it to where they're not afraid. You know what I mean? Men can't be afraid to say that I'm a man and I stand on my masculinity and this is how I am. And if you don't like it, oh well, cry all you want. You know what I mean? We have to stop giving these people so much power by acknowledging their grievances that are really just grievances that are trying to manipulate you to give them their way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Tell me a little bit about the reentry program that you run. Cause you had said that I don't know if
Yeah.
you started something or got involved with something, but that's pretty cool to see that you turning around and helping other people who are in a situation you were in, helping them navigate that because you're a little bit further out ahead than they are.
So it actually started through the church that I attend, Peace Chapel of LA. It's over on 76th and Avalon, and it's in the heart of LA. Anyways, I didn't go to the church first. The pastor there, DeAntoine Fitz, he had read some articles that I had written and reached out to me and was like, "Look, this is what I'm doing. I want to put together a program for men. We're in the process of buying a halfway house, and we're going to start a program through that halfway house. And I want you to be involved in it." So I do it every Saturday. We run a class from 9:30 to 11 right there at the church. We have men coming from the halfway houses that come, and really it's just about um, you know getting us to be able to be comfortable with the situation that we're in and how we're going to overcome it and to see things in a different level. A lot of times these men, it's like they're stuck in this box of this is the type of people I need to be around, this is how I have to dress, this is how I have to talk. And what I try to do is get them out of that and say that there's a whole different side of life. And it doesn't matter how many years you did in prison or how much drugs you were addicted to, you can overcome that and we can start to become the men that we were supposed to be. So we do it every Saturday. It's been going great. It's been almost 2 years now that I've been doing it. We're planning on expanding and doing some bigger things this year. And it's a and going back to the point I said earlier about the camaraderie, it kind of has really helped with that as far as for me personally. You know what I mean? I always tell them that I get a lot out of it because I'm around people that understand, that struggle that we come from, and we're able to kind of build bonds through that and try to help each other overcome it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's powerful. Well, brother, I appreciate the work that you're doing. It's awesome to be able to connect and learn and hear about more of your story. And I know a lot of the men are going to resonate, whether they've been in your exact situation or something different. They can see how they can overcome those odds and make themselves better in spite of their history. Tell the guys where to connect with you. You've got a podcast called No Spoon Podcast, and then you've got your first book, which is called The Freedom Doctrine. I think that's book one of I don't know how many, but
Yeah.
tell the guys a little bit about that, and then where they can connect with you.
So you can go to my YouTube, the No Spoon Podcast. I put videos up all the time. Going to get back to running a weekly live show. We talk about culture, politics, and common sense. That's the tagline behind it. My book is called The Freedom Doctrine, Book One. The reason it's book one is because it's going to be a series, and this book is just basically telling my story, so you can see where I'm coming from. And I'm going to get into. I really wrote this book because I wasn't happy with the rehabilitation programs that they had for men that were coming out of prison and addiction and stuff like that. I really think that we need to get back to. I always say this, and when it comes to those type of institutions, a lot of them are ran by women, and I don't have nothing wrong with women, giving their input. But what I'm saying is that sometimes, and I think society is doing this a lot, that we're trying to give feminine answers to masculine problems. And so
Right.
what I wanted to do was write a program, and this whole series of books is going to be based on that, is how we can start giving masculine answers to masculine problems and start dealing it as men and how men see the world. And so, you can read this book if you're in any situation. You don't have to have been in prison or on drugs. You could just be in a situation where you just feel like your life is at a standstill, or you don't feel like as a man you're getting your voice is being heard and being able to live out your purpose. And even women can benefit from this book as well. Just being able to see where we fit into the proper scheme of life. But it's called The Freedom Doctrine, Book One. It's available as an ebook right now. I'm going to release the paper book at the end of the month, but it's available on Amazon. You can go and look it up. Just put in The Freedom Doctrine, Book One. It'll come up. Yeah, look for me on Instagram, Che_uncensored. Twitter, No Spoon Podcast. I have a Substack that I'm really trying to get going as well. It's called Che Writes. That's WRITES. Where I'm putting out articles at least once or twice a week. So
Awesome,
all
man.
that
Well,
going
we'll
on, man.
sync everything. Yeah, you are. You do. That's awesome. I love to see it because you're doing good work, and we'll sync everything up so the guys know where to go. Che, I
I
appreciate
appreciate
you and
that.
you taking some time. You know, it's not always fun or easy to talk about these things. Obviously, you do because this is the nature of your work now. But I
Mhm.
appreciate you being willing to put that stuff out there and talk about the past that I imagine you're not totally proud of, but you got to be proud of what you've overcome. So I thank you for that and your example.
Well, I appreciate you, man. I thank you for having me on. I like what you're doing over at, with your show and everything like that, and the things that you have going on, man. And it's great to connect with like-minded individuals, even if we come from different backgrounds and different walks of life. I like to say that, these principles and these values, they transcend. So it doesn't matter whether you're in the military, you were in prison, you were in gangs, you were in sports, you're just living, working a 9 to 5 job. The same principles that for success are there no matter what. And so we can use them no matter what situation we've been through.
Right on. Thank you, brother.
Hey, appreciate that, bro. Have a good one.